Hello, we are Team Disaffected. This piece was made for IMG 1000, a class at Worcester Polytechnic Institute instructed by Kathleen Morrissey. In this video, we analyze the game Superliminal and construct an argument based on its content. As a warning, there will be spoilers ahead. Superliminal is a perspective-based puzzle game which requires the player to manipulate perspective to their advantage. By picking up and moving objects, they can be given new purpose, whether it's through resizing blocks into a set of stairs, or making a miniature bouncy castle big enough to walk in. This allows the player to move forward within the layout of the levels, though not all these solutions are easy to figure out. Superliminal initially presents itself as a classic escape the facility game, but slowly changes to show a new perspective on failure and a bit of commentary on societal norms and expectations. To begin, we'll cover the level design and visuals of the game, then we'll move into the overall narrative and how the story evolves. Afterwards, we'll incorporate how the player engages with Superliminal and reinforces the message it's conveying. Finally, we'll integrate all the aspects we discussed into a conversation on how failure presents in society. Superliminal begins very office-like, based in reality, with basic perspective puzzles like trying to turn a wedge of cheese into a ramp or making a block big enough to climb on. As levels progress, the design and look evolves, becoming more fantastical as you get further into the game. The clean and neat therapy offices start nice before slowly fading away to the back hallways of a warehouse. Pipes and concrete surrounding you as you walk through them. After the first couple of levels, it devolves further, turning your dream into a movie set-like appearance, open spaces that turn out to just be walled rooms, and at one point, even a moon that turns out to be just another game object. All of these to indicate that everything is not as it seems. When the player delves further, the normality of the levels fades completely, ushering in massive perspective shifts, changing gravity, and seemingly infinite mazes, even more so forcing the player to think outside their normal track of thought. All of this, no matter what the incredible changes are, is always solely accompanied with a soft jazz piano, which can completely contrast the mood of certain areas, soothing the player and reassuring them that these changes are alright. This creates a distinct subversion, a backtrack keeping the mood centered even while reality itself is breaking around the player because of the player's actions. These changes and overall atmosphere within the environment create a feeling in the game that creation and disruption are not only encouraged, but necessary to continue progressing through the game. A beautiful and oftentimes perplexing surface level presentation, preparing the player to open themselves up to new ideas.
Are you filled with feelings of self-doubt? Do you find yourself prone to minimizing massive dilemmas, or for allowing the smallest problems to get blown completely out of proportion? At the Pierce Institute, our patent-pending Somnosculpt technology provides safe and effective dream therapy while you rest in the comfort of our flagship clinic. Located right next to the secondary overflow parking lot at the University Medical Centre. Somnosculpt. We'll make your dreams come true.
Superliminal takes place during a failed sleep therapy session where the protagonist is trapped in an endless series of lucid dreams that become increasingly fantastical over time. You start by going through the Pierce Institute's orientation of their Somnosculpt technology. Almost immediately you get the message, perception is reality. In this world, we learn that is true in the most literal sense. What you see will come true. You get through orientation and reach the final room, but something is wrong. The walls have gaps, the exit is replaced with a brick wall, and the only option is to break out into the back rooms of the research space. You fall through a hole in the floor onto a bed, and wake up in the same one. You think, am I awake? But no, the objects you pick up still grow large or small, and you are still dreaming.
Hello, my name is Dr. Glenn Pierce, and I'd like to talk to you about being special. So special, in fact, that we have no idea where you are. But not to worry, we're working on it.
So things haven't gone as planned. It's nothing to worry about. But as you make your way through the next dreams, they still can't find you. The AI voice helping you through the therapy session warns you. The average adult can only withstand 3 to 5 dreams per night. Exceeding this number will cause an explosive mental overload. However scary it sounds, it is your next best option, as it will reorient you with the emergency exit protocol where you'll be freed from this dream world. Unfortunately, once the player triggers the emergency exit protocol, there is an unknown error. Somnosculpt's AI reports that the therapy failed to eliminate your negative emotions, meaning you cannot leave. You are advised to find your own way out. Will you ever wake up? Are you strong enough? Smart enough?
Hello, my name is Dr. Glenn Pierce, and many years ago, I had a dream. I found myself in a place where I understood that each of us begins as nothing, where everything I perceived was shaped by seeing it exactly the way I wanted to. White space.
In white space, the rules are pushed to the extreme. The main idea that perception is reality is emphasized. A new perspective in white space can make anything possible.
Hello, my name is Dr. Glenn Pierce, and by now, you may have realized that all of this has happened exactly the way it was supposed to.
The point of Somnoscoped was to force you to see things from different perspectives and to make it a reality. Problems that seemed impossible can be solved by looking at them from a different angle. When you thought everything was going wrong, you pushed through, you found a solution, you grew as a person. Superliminal's mechanics are very simple at the surface level. The game allows you to interact with objects such as buttons, fire extinguishers, and fire alarms, as well as grabbing and manipulating objects. Where this gets complicated is the first-person camera. A game object that you pick up may start small, but as you move it around in front of you, the game will then assume the object is actually far back against the surface in front of you. See this toy block, for example. To start, it begins small, but as you pick it up and drop it again, it moves to the far wall. When we approach it again, we can notice that it grew. The same is also possible in reverse. We may grab a large block and move it in between us and a nearby wall, a spot where it can clearly not fit. But as we move our view, the block shrinks to accommodate the game world, while staying consistently sized within the window of our view. This camera trickery also presents itself in other ways, such as grabbing painted objects off of walls at specific angles, or manipulating your own relative size through controlling linked doorways. All of these reinforce a sense of whimsical control that is never shown in a negative light. All actions taken can be reversed except for a select few, and those few are always additive in their consequences within the game world. However, the most significant action the player can take to clue them into the nature of the game is also the simplest, and it litters every level throughout the game from start to end: the fire alarms. Early on, a player with a keen eye might notice that these unsuspecting fire alarms are interactable, but almost everyone would notice them eventually due to their overwhelming presence and often odd placement throughout the levels. But what do these fire alarms do? Set off a blaring alarm throughout the dreamscape, or result in a scolding dialogue from the game's narrator a la the Stanley Parable? The truth is, they do nothing. Activate as many as you want, you may even get yourself an achievement. This blatantly gives away the game's main intent, unshackling the player from the fear of negative consequences. Both the subversion with the fire alarm and the naturally reversible or additive actions the player can take with Superliminal's objects encourage the player to explore without fear, to discover new perspectives from which to escape while breaking down the walls of social norms that bind us in our day-to-day lives. When you hear a word like failure, what emotions come to mind? Anger, sadness, or regret? Why is that? As a society, we have a tendency to frame failure as an overwhelming negative. We have phrases like "history is written by the victors" that reinforce this train of thought. Although on the other hand, there are those that see failure not as a fault, but as a stepping stone to success. Superliminal feeds into this train of thought directly as its primary method of encouraging broadening one's perspective. It starts by setting up an atmosphere where there are no rules or consequences through a dream, breaking the conventions and physics of the real world to show that anything is possible. Then, they introduce the core motivator for the player: escape the faulty dream therapy, tricking the player into looking for the cracks in its carefully presented facade and encouraging trial and error to progress in unconventional ways. During this, they also introduce a variety of unique mechanics to facilitate creative expression, none of which prevent the player from making the choices they desire, including withholding standard repercussions normally enforced in society, like pulling a fire alarm without reason. In the end, Superliminal comes to its conclusion where it reveals that the dream therapy didn't break at the start. And do you know how you got here? By failing. Over and over again. How many times did you wake up in that initial room? And that's okay. By failing, you reached the end, completed your dream therapy, and finished the game. Failing was the story that wrote your success. All that was needed was looking at things from a different point of view, because as they told you, perception is reality. If you made it to the end, thank you for listening. This video essay was put together by Brooklyn Amerman, John Simas, Peter Griffiths, and myself, Dennis Field. Also, please go play Superliminal. It is a fantastic, albeit short game that matches titles such as the Stanley Parable and Portal. Farewell now.